In view of the three histories of Africa that I have just detailed, we are going to take a detour, a little bit of a detour, and not focus on either the pre-colonial Africa or the pre-colonial African even. We are not going to focus about what the pre-colonial African ate, what they wore, how they traveled, what gods they worshipped, what ancestors they paid their respects to. We're not going to focus on libations and legends and myths. We're also not going to focus on the white man traipsing through Africa. And the reason for it is because there's hundreds of books that have the Livingstone, the Conrads. We're not going to focus on that aspect of Africa. We're also not really going to focus on the post-colonial history of Africa. I'm not going to be telling you about Africans waving flags of independence. I'm not going to tell you about Kwame Nkrumah or Julius Nyerere or Kenneth Kaunda. There has been plenty that has been written about that. Instead, the detour that we are going to take is via gold and the history of metallurgy and gold in Africa. Why? It is because gold is essentially the single vein that runs through pre-colonial, colonial, and post-colonial Africa. By looking at Africa's material culture, we will get a view of the artisanship that was involved in the production of gold objects. We will get a view of the immensity of the wealth that African kings often amass by just having access to gold. Some of you may have heard of this African king called Mansa Musa, who actually went on a pilgrimage to Mecca as a convert to Islam. And when he arrived in Egypt, he was carrying so much gold that he tanked the Egyptian economy. The Egyptians had never seen so much gold in their lives. So Mansa Musa has become the only African king that people know about who carried gold while traveling across the world in his case. But actually, there were many other African kings who carried gold while traveling and went to show off that they were wealthy by carrying these piles and piles of gold. So gold is in the culture, gold is in the history of status, gold is in the history of kings, gold is also in the history of empires. Many empires on the African continent would not have existed without gold. And so this is going to be the theme of this first course in African history, but also simply because you all know what gold looks like. You all have seen it in the shops. You all like gold. You wear things that have gold embossing, that have gold lettering. And so gold is part of our contemporary culture. And so you know what it looks like. If I had picked any other object, if I had picked cowrie shells, many of you would be sitting and saying, what the hell is a cowrie shell? I don't know what that looks like. In another time, in another lesson, we will talk about the history of cowrie shells on the African continent. But many of you would have to look it up. But gold seems so self-evident, but actually not so when it comes to the history of Africa.